Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Anthony podcast. It's been a while, but I'm back with Dom from Gimme A Hull Yeah. We've done a part one before, so I'll leave that in the corner if you want to go check it out. So how you doing today, Dom?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm doing okay. It's lovely to be back on here. Lovely to be back with you. I've seen you're always putting so much effort into your streams and stuff. So it's just nice to catch up. Like, it's nice to do an interview and everything. But just like, because I respect what you do so much, it's nice to just hang out with you. You know what I mean? So it's cool to have a chat, but it's good to see you as well,
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, mate.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you as well.
So, just for the people that might not have seen the first one, you work for a magazine, or is it a website called Sphere?
That's right.
So sorry, what were you gonna say? Apologies.
Yeah, no, it's okay, man. So Soundsphere is it's an alternative arts and culture publication specific to the north of England, but we do also cover around the world, and we interview bands and artists from all over the world, as well as supporting local artists, from Yorkshire and the UK. We offer training to young people as well who want to get their start in journalism but can't afford to go to London, where obviously the major part of the music industry and the media industry is London based, but a lot of young people can't afford to do the internships and work for free, for 2 years or whatever to get their foot in the door. So we provide the training for people. They can work in their own space, in their own time. For example, if they've got a mental health issue or they've got a disability or difference, they can work in their own home, in their own space, and create content for us and build that portfolio. So in summary, Soundsphere is an arts and culture. We used to be a print magazine, and now we're a digital website, entirely digital. And we not only interview and work with some of the biggest bands and artists in the world and companies like WWE and Impact Wrestling and AEW, but we also train young people to give them the skills to do that as well.
Yeah, the reason why I brought that up is because you mentioned before we started recording, you mentioned that obviously because it's festival season, you've got a lot of people going to these festivals. So from getting the people to do that, is that all like volunteer work, or are they actual employees on the site?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we do is like I say, a lot of our writers start off on work placement with us. So they'll come from a university or a college, but particularly university. So we work with York St John University. We work with Chester University, University of Central Lancashire in Preston, Leeds Beckett. So different universities across the country provide us with young people and students who are on their course. But crucially, if they stay with us and they choose to stay with us post their internship and placement, which is obviously work that they're doing as part of their university degree or something like that, then they can get paid opportunities. Yes, so there are paid opportunities, and we do pay our writers, freelance writers, to do work for us, and that could be going to a festival, it could be doing photography, could be doing an interview like this on Zoom if it's an artist, in a different country. So yeah, we do internships and work placements, which is obviously collaborating with universities, and that's part of their process. But then if people choose to stay with us, they can get paid opportunities as well. Yeah.
So in our first interview, we spoke about you having self-reported, or in terms of festivals, something like that. How difficult is that for you personally? Because I can imagine over the years it hasn't been the most accessible place.
No. I mean, festivals are getting better. It's a great question as well. Festivals are getting better now in terms of accessible platforms and things like that. But when it comes to working them, Anthony, when it comes to working them, it's difficult because you gotta run around, or in my case, wobble around on my two sticks. I'm wobbling around at a great pace, trying to get to cover a band, for example, on a stage. Then I'm going backstage to do an interview with an artist. And honestly, if I'm being honest with you, that was the early part of my career, was going to these festivals myself, doing all the work, running around or wobbling around and doing these interviews and things. It was very, very intense, very, but as as any journalist will say, as any person you speak to, in the industry will say, it's all about networking. So for me, it's crucial to be at these places where possible. As you know, I've become a bit of a hermit over the pandemic. I'm a bit in love with Zoom, so I need to separate myself from doing interviews on Zoom. I'm very comfortable like this now, but I do need to get back out there and back out to festivals because it's very important to be seen, very important to be out there and doing stuff, in the music industry and kind of networking. So that was what that was about at the early part of my career. But now it is more about me giving those opportunities to other people. So the people that are at these festivals for me now are sort of, they're in sort of 18, 19, 20, 21. They're excited. They're willing to run around and do loads of stuff, and they have a great time doing it. I'll do it occasionally, and I do recognize I need to network, and networking is crucial. You have to network to get work. I believe it was Chris Van Vliet who said that. I understand that. But honestly, Anthony, I prefer, I'm aware I prefer doing interviews like this, and I prefer doing them in this way. But in the early days when I was starting Soundsphere, to answer your question, it was very hard to get to an interview because you've got time, you've got a time limit. You've usually got 5 minutes with a big artist, then you've got to go over, you're running over to some stage somewhere to cover a band. So those memories are great. They're really cool. But like, I don't do as much of it these days, probably as I should. I usually leave that to younger, more, I don't know. I wouldn't say I've become cynical. I still love what I do, but there are younger people who are much more excited than I am to go to a festival and get muddy and sleep in a tent, than I am. I like a comfy bed these days instead of a muddy tent and not sleeping and smelling like wee. When people are weeing on your tents or whatever, because that does happen. People do that sort of stuff. Particularly at Leeds Festival, which is coming up, and that's one we're working on and stuff this year. So yeah, that's the long answer to your very good question.
I've forgot no doubt that happened, but I still find it a bit peculiar. Obviously, I imagine people are very intoxicated when they do it.
Oh, absolutely.
I still find it a bit weird, to be honest.
I mean, you would hope they were intoxicated, wouldn't you? Yeah. I mean, there's no guarantee, but most of the time, you would hope they were drunk if they were going to be weeing on you or your tent. Yeah.
Going back to something that you said earlier, when you said I run around, but then you corrected yourself and you said I hobble around. I do that quite a lot when I'm saying to people I walked up the road. I stopped myself and said I wheeled myself up the road, and I just find it funny because you can see sometimes people want to laugh, but they feel a bit awkward like laughing.
It's true. Yeah, it's people. Some people do. Some people do, and some people. You can see some people stopping themselves, and I imagine you have this all the time. People, the closer they are to you, and this is my experience, it's not, the closer they are to you, the more comfortable they are laughing, right? Because they know you and they get your vibe. But people that don't know you, you can see them like trying hard, not doing this, but that happens a lot. Yeah, people stopping themselves laughing. Yeah.
So sometimes I just do it to myself. I just do it to make myself laugh because I know it will make them feel it. I know it will create an awkward atmosphere, so I just do it to make myself laugh because otherwise I just feel a bit awkward, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, man. I know exactly what you mean, and you've got a good sense of humor as well. I think I think it comes across if you can sort of if you can have a little laugh with people, you know what I mean, and it's respectful because obviously you know your friends and stuff, they know you really well. I think that's cool, you know what I mean. You know, I think it's nice to have a little bit of a laugh sometimes among people that you know and care about you and stuff like that. Yeah.
But going back to you, Paul, and do you know when you first started doing interviews in person?
Yeah.
How is that doing interviews virtually? Do you enjoy them more? Do you enjoy them less, or are they about the same?
It's a good question, man. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to loads of people recently, and you know, I've spoken to you before about interviews, and I think that I still get just as nervous as I did. I've been doing this for about 14 years now, and I still get just as nervous as I did when I started. In fact, it doesn't get any easier, and sometimes, I mean, sometimes you know what you know the vibe, and you know the sort of the train of thought that you're going down with a set of questions, for example. But like, I always like the idea that if you stopped caring, if you didn't do any research for an interview, for example, like if I asked you, if you didn't do any research for an interview, right? Like to me, it shows you don't care if you're not researching and you're not nervous and you're not a little nervous about it. Like, you know, it. I find that really. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. I think that if you're not nervous, you don't care about it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I know that sounds a bit controversial. I'm not saying people that are confident doing interviews you don't care about it, but I think like being nervous inspires you to do research, inspires you to know what you're talking about, and inspires you to really care about what you're doing. So like in going back to your original question, I'm still just as nervous as I was when I first started, before I do an interview. And I think that has helped me because it means that I always go in armed with a toolbox, so to speak, of questions and things that I've researched. I've watched other people's interviews. I've got questions that have come up from them. You know, I'm well researched when I go into my interviews about what I do. And I think if I was too confident and didn't do that, then maybe it wouldn't come across as well. Do you know? Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, it makes sense perfectly to me.
Cool.
I'm going to try and word this the best way I can.
Yeah, it's all right.
Do you know in the music industry, because obviously YouTube people, some people have said that the aspect of the game that is missing in actually improvement, because nowadays you can post a song online and then it can go viral, and then you're doing sold out readers, and you think that the same thing with interviewing to a certain extent, like because because of Zoom and stuff. Do you think the art? Do you think the art of doing an interview in person is something people could learn?
Yeah, that is a great question because like I said to you before, I've become a bit too comfortable doing it over Zoom. I think the art of sort of interviewing in person is very important because that's where you meet people. That's where you meet the managers and the PR representatives that set up the interviews. You know what I mean? So there's always a team of people behind these big bands that are usually with them at the festivals. You know, and they're waiting to shake your hand or they're waiting to meet people. They're waiting to meet you rather. And by doing it over Zoom, you cut all that out. So I would say to anybody watching this, I would say, yeah, it's really important that you do some face-to-face stuff as well. And I need to listen to my own advice because like I say, I rely too much these days on Zoom because it's easier. I could be sat, I always joke, I've joked with you before, I could be sat right now with no pants on doing this interview and you wouldn't know. I can assure you that I do have pants on. I have dressed myself for you, I promise. But like that's what I mean. If I can get away with that on Zoom, but if I was out in the world, you've got to present yourself well, you've got to be professional. So I think that while Zoom is great and it's been a great tool over the pandemic and it's wonderful for stuff like this, for me and you, and also crucially important for journalists like yourself and like people like yourself who have a little bit more in terms of accessibility to work with. You are a prime example of why Zoom and digital journalism is thriving, because your channel is doing well and you've done some great interviews. So I think for the work you do is a great example of what digital journalism can do for someone. But I think if you are in a position where you can get out to as many shows as possible and do interviews, go backstage and have that vibe and do all that, which is something I've done, for years and years. So I know what it's like. I think you should. I think if you can, you should go out and meet the PRs, meet the management, meet all those people behind the bands, because those are the people that are going to help you as you progress in your career. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that is not discounting, before I finish the answer to your question, that is not discounting the value of things like this and a platform like this, like Zoom, like digital journalism. You, Anthony, are a digital journalist. You do great work digitally, and it allows you to contact people all over the world for interviews. So I think, for accessibility and stuff, it's wonderful. But if you are watching this, and if you're watching this and you're in a situation like myself, and obviously Anthony in a very different situation physically, and you're looking at, you say have some accessibility issues, then absolutely do as much as you can on Zoom, do as much as you can like this, pitch for interviews, do as many interviews like this on Zoom as you can. But if you are, if you're a journalist and you think that, you're not going to be, you're going to get away with not going out and meeting people and be able to get away without that, then I would still say, that skill of going out, meeting people, doing face-to-face interviews is invaluable.
So when you have done interviews in person, like obviously you, I would imagine you use things like a tripod and things like that. I really do that for you to set up yourself.
Yeah, good, really good. I think setting up the interviews is fine in terms of the same way that I would set a Zoom interview up. But the issue I have with the accessibility angle, for example, I mean, this is a something coming up for me now, reflecting on your question, is oftentimes when big bands, I'll walk in to do the interview and I'm, obviously my legs are, they look a little, like I say, that there's a little wobble, I wobble a little bit, and I've got my sticks. Oftentimes bands will actually come, they'll want to talk about me and what I'm doing there more than they want to talk about their own stuff. So oftentimes I've been in the room with bands that I've looked up to and I've, listened to my entire life, and they go, oh, hey, mate, how are you doing? Oh, tell me what's up, what's up with your legs or something like that. And then you'll have a whole 5-minute, 10-minute conversation in the middle of this interview, which has a time limit, about, disability and stuff. And they usually come away and they're like, oh, it was great to meet you. I've never seen someone in your situation do this before. Really cool to meet you. So actually, it can work in your favor when you're setting up interviews and you're talking about accessibility. And maybe you've got some requirements, like I can't stand up for the whole thing, which is one of mine. Like usually I need a seat. Usually people are very accommodating. You know, and like I say, it goes back to your earlier question. I think more and more now festivals over the last 5 to 10 years, and I don't know whether you've seen this as well, like in the last 5 to 10 years, things are steadily becoming more accessible for people. Festivals and platforms and, even businesses are making more effort to be more accessible for people like myself. And, I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, I've never actually been to a festival because in terms of sleeping in a tent, as I got older, my body can't
Yep.
really deal with it.
Get
But
that?
But when I was younger, I did go on were you just a random question, were you ever in the scouts or anything like that?
I was, yeah. I was in the Scouts, yeah. I used to have the Cubs, yeah, the Cubs and stuff, Cub Scouts, yeah. That was great fun.
So I went on one of them holidays when I was younger, but ever since then I haven't really been camping. 'Cause as I say, I can't really do it. So I have never been to a festival. So
Well,
yeah,
I tell you what, mate, the reality of festivals, right, is like it's 20%, maybe, let's be real, right? 40% is bands and seeing bands and artists, right? That's cool, yeah. But the rest of it is muddy, especially in the UK, right? Especially UK. It's mud, it's smelly, like it's, you have to wear the same clothes like over and over. There's no showers. You're not like, this is not doing my credibility as a music journalist a lot. But like, I get these days, if I go to a festival, I get hotels because like you're not missing a lot. Like, unless when you're missing seeing bands, and that is a wonderful experience, bands and artists and all that, right? But if you're at a festival, right, there's like, you've got to leave the band and the artist that you've just seen. You've got to go back to your tent, right? And if it's a hot day, it's boiling, right? And you've got to, like, get your kit off, and there's everybody else getting their kit off. So you see everyone else sweating and being, like, and they're all drinking loads of beer. And I don't know, man. Like, different music journalists would tell you that it's some of the best experiences in their life, right? And I've had some wonderful experiences at festivals. But in terms of accessibility, right, and in terms of quite frankly, the ball ache that it can be getting around a festival, especially if it's like muddy and rainy and stuff, like, yeah, you're not missing loads. You're not missing loads.
and I imagine if you're in a wheelchair, you have all these wankers standing up, so you can't even see
Yeah.
half of the time.
It's the worst. And the disabled platforms as well, and credit to a lot of the festivals, and it has to be said for anybody that does see this, the platforms are getting closer. There are certain festivals that put their disabled platforms, their viewing platforms, which you can go up on your chair, and people usually with differences and things like that, neurodiversity, can go up there, right? They're getting closer. But I've seen so many festivals with platforms like way back. Like, you can't even, do you know what I mean? You can't really see the bands and stuff. So what that would be my message to any, festival owners and organizations that watch this, or anybody that's in the music industry, is, if you can, make your viewing platforms, your accessible platforms, a little closer to the stage, because, like I say, I've been in a wheelchair at a festival. It's not fun, like, for those reasons you mentioned. But even these days, there's more accessibility that can be, there's always more work that can be done. And I think a lot of the festivals need to move their platforms, their viewing platforms, closer to the stage, for people, so they can actually see the band, is one of those things. But yeah, like you say, there's a lot of issues for people in terms of, viewing, actually being able to see the bands, which I would like to change.
And in my personal opinion, I think people's perspectives on wheelchair users have changed a little bit. I think people are a lot more. I think people are a lot more accommodating and understanding than what they used to be, like a decade ago or even 5 years ago. You think that's a fair statement or not? Really?
I absolutely think so, man. I absolutely think so. I think if you look at, if you look at like your experience and my experience, obviously very different, in a lot of ways. But like I used to be, back 10 years ago, I used to still get people talking down to me. I used to still get people, people made loads of assumptions, right? And I think now, because I'm doing what I'm doing, and because I'm out there, well, less these days because I spend more time doing interviews on Zoom, as we said. But because I'm out there at festivals, and because I'm doing stuff and meeting people, and because you are present, and you have a channel, and you have an outlet, because we are visible and we're doing what we're doing, I think not just us. I mean, Tom is another example. Tom Talks Rubbish.
Yeah.
There are so many people boosting visibility and changing perceptions of what people are capable of. I think 5-10 years there was less, there was less emphasis on YouTube as a platform. There was less emphasis on, accessibility. So going back to your original point, yeah, 5-10 years ago, things were a lot worse for people with disabilities. I think more and more, especially with the younger generation, kicking up more of a fuss, around accessibility, around neurodivergence. Things are getting much better for people with accessibility issues and with additional needs. But I think a lot of that is down to, again, people like you having channels like you do, and people like Tom having channels like he does, raising awareness of just what people are capable of. You are shattering expectations of what maybe people thought of you 10-15 years ago. You are now shattering those expectations by having a platform, by interviewing people, by meeting people every day, digitally or not, as you do. And I think that's something to be proud of as well. Out there in the world, there are festivals, and there are more and more people championing accessibility and doing more for diversity and people with additional needs. But yeah, like I say, it all comes down to, like I say, stuff like this. People like you and me talking about what we're talking about is raising awareness of just what people can do, whether they've got additional needs, neurodivergence or whatever.
So going back to your interviewing, you mentioned a couple of times that you predominantly do bands. Is that a conscious decision on your part, or is that just the route Soundsphere went down and you just jumped on board?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because we've had trouble. It's a very, very good point. Because we started in music because I was a fan of music. It's simple. I was a fan of music, right? I always loved music, and people wanted to see, I'm aware, as a white dude, I've got a lot of privilege, and I understand that. But back in the day, and that will always be there. I'll remain privileged because of that fact. Yeah. But back in the day, people wanted to see a guy with a disability talking about music. Back in the day, I wish I was doing YouTube. I came to YouTube way too late. Like, I came to YouTube way too late. I was doing written features.
Wait, I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, please do.
When did you come to YouTube? Like, what year? Can you remember?
Yeah, so I started doing YouTube, but I didn't take it seriously. I started doing video stuff maybe 2014, something like that. But I only did like maybe 1 or 2 videos a year. We would put video, filmed interviews up with bands once or twice a year. And I wish I'd, taken the audio from my phone interviews, or use the video from or videoed stuff more, because a lot of it was written. And that's great, on soundspheremag.com, the website, you can see all of our interviews. But there's a lot of huge interviews I did, back in the day with massive bands, members of like My Chemical Romance or Chris Jericho, when Fozzy, that is digitally there, in written form. Kurt Angle is another one, but there's no video evidence. And I look at like Chris Van Vliet, and I look at other examples of people that you and I, watch as wrestling fans or music or fans of music.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish I'd done that sooner. But yes, going back to your question, it started as music and it's remained that way because people wanted to see someone with cerebral palsy talking about music because no one was doing it. You remember, I've been doing this a long time. I'm pretty old, man. So like, I've been doing this a long time and I started in my early 20s, and I started making money in my early 20s from it. And back then, a young person with cerebral palsy talking about music was different. So we were getting like funding, we were, getting money, we were all this stuff. And so music made sense. And then as I've got older, and it goes back to what I was saying at first, I'm having a lot of difficulty now persuading people, particularly AEW, so the wrestling stuff, for example, they only, and it's great that we have that connection, right? And I just want to say, if anybody from AEW's team is watching this, I'm very grateful to them for doing that. But they only give us interviews with artists associated with music, which is great, because it's, you've got your Malachi Blacks, for example, or your Brody Kings, because they've got that heavy metal background, right? But like they don't necessarily think that Soundsphere is right for, say a Brian Danielson or something like that. And that's something that's a challenge, for us as we continue, is that we are so associated with music that as we've moved into video games, as we've moved into wrestling, people actually go, well, hang on a second, you're a music site. So what are you doing covering wrestling and video games? So, that's a challenge of some of what we do that we're still facing and still trying to work around now.
Like, not to make it about me, but that's why I like to brand my. That's why I like to brand my channel as me, because that means I can do whatever I want.
Great. Yeah, and you've done a great, that's a prime example of why I admire what you've done, because you've got a name and you've got a reputation with the Anthony podcast that, and the subscriber count is proof of that. You've developed a brand, and it's great that you've done that because, you are yourself, whereas the clue is in the name, unfortunately, with what we do. And I'm not saying unfortunately, because it is my job. I do, we have so many privileges with Soundsphere, to travel the world. I've lived in different countries. I've done all these wonderful things. But again, I did, when I started getting into wrestling, people were like, well, it's Soundsphere. So what's wrestling got to do with sound, with music? You see what I mean? So yeah, I've kind of, it's an interesting point you make. Like, you have a brand that doesn't box you into anything. Whereas I think, yeah, Soundsphere in a way is boxed into that music thing, which is fine. But it is interesting to get to this point in my career and have these sort of challenges.
I will say it's hard to build an audience when you do a variety of different content. Because obviously, not to bore people, but obviously you have the YouTube algorithm and things like that. So it is hard, but I would rather do that than just do one type of content and then in like 2 months or something I get bored of it.
Yeah,
I don't like it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I mean, I think actually, you listening to you has kind of made me think. It's funny whenever I do interviews with you, I really think about stuff. Like, you make me really think about things. And as I was answering that last question, I felt quite bad because I was like, hang on, maybe I've boxed myself in a lot of ways. However, going back to that first question you asked me, we're a business, right? And Soundsphere isn't just me. That's what I've got to remember. That Soundsphere provides opportunities and is a job opportunity for other people. So, and I can't take credit. While I built it and while I created the platform, it is so much more than me, in terms of writers, in terms of journalists, in terms of if you go on the Soundsphere YouTube, there are other people presenting on there, other people doing interviews. So I think in a lot of ways, it's better for me and for what we've done to have a brand that isn't, say, Dom Smith, something like that. For you, I think it works perfectly because you are the brand. You are in the same way, Tom is his brand. Tom Talks Rubbish is his brand. And Chris Van Vliet is his brand. Alicia Atu is her brand, right? But for me, like, I like creating opportunities for other people. And so that's why Soundsphere works. So actually I've gone from feeling quite down about it when you not because of you asked me a great question and it made me think. That's why you're such a good journalist, because you made me think, right? So I was like, oh yeah, he's right, so Anthony's right, maybe I should have done from the beginning 14 years ago, maybe I should have done Dom Smith interviews or something, but actually it's worked out the way it has, because with Soundsphere I can use it to support other people, and fundamentally that is how I have chosen to live my professional and personal life. And I'm actually quite proud of that. So in the space of 5 minutes during this interview, I've gone from feeling like, oh yeah, man, maybe I should have done that, to going, no, it was right, I've done the right thing, it's okay, I've done the right thing.
I think one of my problems is, well, I don't know whether it's a problem that I'm very individual minded. It's not that I don't care about people, but I'm just narrow focused on what I want from.
Makes sense.
It's not that I don't want to help anybody out, because of course I would love to help out people, but I'm not gonna sacrifice my goals and aspirations for other people. I know that might sound like a dick.
No, it doesn't. I get it completely. But again, like, I think the reason why, and I've never really thought about this before, which again, props to you as an interviewer, right? Like, for me, I always wanted to create opportunities for other people because it's good for business to create opportunities for other people. For me, it was a way to access funding by creating job opportunities for other people. And also, I wanted to give people an opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have, to present, for example, on YouTube, or to host an interview with their favorite band. That's lifelong memories for somebody else that I have created for somebody. And I hope that doesn't sound egotistical, because I don't go, oh yeah, I'm really glad that I've done this for somebody. But when somebody comes to me and they say, thank you for giving me that opportunity, I'm like, yeah, man. And crucially, what if I can't get to an interview, right? That's the other reason. There's a lot of times. So, for example, Leeds Festival this weekend, one of the biggest festivals in the country, Leeds and Reading Festival, right? Over 2 days in August every year.
Yeah.
Now, if we weren't there, right, that would probably look pretty bad, as we've got a good reputation as a music blog or music platform in the UK. But I'm sending an able-bodied journalist to do that coverage for me. So they do the work, they'll do the photography, they'll do the review, they'll do the interviews. And that to them is an experience that they can take forward, but it also provides me with good quality work. And I like the idea of creating that network for other people. Like Anthony from Anthony Nayland from the Gimme A Hull Yeah podcast.
Yeah.
He'll cover interviews, for example, if I can't do them. And actually, he's a better interviewer than I am. So it's about accessing people with skills, not saying that like it's about going, okay, well, I can give this opportunity to somebody, they'll do a really good job, and we'll still get the views or the interest. You see what I mean? But I completely understand. If I'd started when you did, and I think this is crucial as well, because if I'd started on YouTube when you did, and I was maybe I'd probably be doing what you're doing. If I was a YouTuber first, if I was a YouTube journalist and a digital journalist, we'll call it, because I call you a digital journalist. If I was a digital journalist first, then I would probably be doing it on my own. But when we were doing print magazines and when we were doing, you need other people. So I've always kind of been like, I've always built a team around me, and that's helped me get to where I am. And I can't deny that. But I think finishing off, because I know it's been a long answer, finishing off, I think if I had started when you did, and if I'd started before before doing print journalism, before starting a website, if I had started on YouTube, I'd probably be doing what you're doing. I think, yeah.
Like if I was to create if I want to create a site or like a channel like Soundsphere, for example, I don't think I would put myself on it. I think I would like to just stop in the background and just do my own thing. Obviously, like still be a part of it from like behind the scenes, but in terms of like on camera and stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a guy that I quite admire, and Anthony from the Gimme A Hull Yeah podcast was quite close to him when we first started, and he's got millions and millions of hits. I'm trying to think of the guy. I'm just going to type it in. So I do. I'm just going to type in his channel just so I get the name right. Wrestle with Andy. Right, Wrestle with Andy's channel. Now, if you go on Wrestle with Andy, anybody goes on this, right? If you go on his early videos, he's a guy with a thick Scottish accent. Thick Scottish accent, right? And these are his early videos. And obviously he did his research for his, he does like biographies, full career biographies of like Raven, who's one of my favorite wrestlers, or loads and loads. But as he's got older, as his channel has got bigger, he has an American narrator. So his voice is not there anymore. He has an American narrator for his content. And I was that's how I think. Yeah, I'm like, right, okay, what is best for the channel? What is best for my business? So the best example I can give you from Soundsphere is so we interviewed a metal band called Voice of Bass Prot, BACEPROT. Now they are an Indonesian, and I'm going to just check this out because I obviously wasn't planning. This is because you make me think. They're an all-female metal band, right? Yeah. And they have obviously their image, it's they do incredible work. They're all females, and they're talking about their culture, where they come from, and all that kind of stuff. Now, what I did was, for that interview, I got a young person who was non-binary, who I work with, who works with me, and they were a huge fan of this band. Really admired them, again, from a culture that does not promote metal, does not support it. They are doing, and again, I just want to make sure that that I've got all my facts straight, because it was a while since since we did the interview. But what crucially what I'm saying is that I didn't do it. I didn't do the interview because what was best for, I got it right. So an Indonesian all-female rock trio from West Java, right? So obviously, and they they speak in Sudanese typically, but they also speak English. Now, going back, and I'll finish my point here because I know I'm going off on one. But what was best to use a Triple H term, right? To use a wrestling term, what was best for business was not for me as a straight white male to do that interview, because I am not equipped to understand what it's like. But Jay, who Tom has interviewed on his channel, Jay Mitra, who is non-binary and comes, is not doesn't come from a white background, comes from an Indian background, who is a journalist, who is a fan of that band, is the perfect person to do that interview. You see what I mean? So for me, going back to what you were saying before about if you had a channel, if you had a website, you would be in the background. And going back to my, mentioning Wrestle with Andy, he's obviously realized that he can reach more people with an American voiceover accent rather than the hard Scottish accent that he started with, right? And I realized with Soundsphere that the speaking to this band who are talking about activism, talking about being from a country that does not support metal, does not support their lifestyle, as a white dude who comes from a supportive background, I don't know what that's like. You see what I mean? So for me it was appropriate to have somebody else do it and to have another voice on the channel. So going back to what you were saying before and finishing off, yeah, I think in certain times and in certain things, it is appropriate to have another voice and to step back, like you said, like step back, be in the background. And I think that that's important in a business setting, that you're not always going to be the best person to do the interviews, and you're not always going to be the best person to do it. So if you can and you have the opportunity to bring other people in and you can afford it, because not everybody can, I'm aware of that, then do it,
Because I feel representation and equality is important. So I always want to make content that everybody can enjoy, whatever you identify as, whatever your religion is, whatever your outlook on the world is. I always want to make content that people can enjoy together. At the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing. And in terms of me stepping back, I just feel like in wrestling, for example, not to get too far into this, because I don't think we're the right people to do this. But I feel like the too many just playing white males.
Yeah, there is, right? It's the white dudes with the beards. We've all got beards. We've all got long hair, right? That's what I mean. That channels like yours and Tom's, and I know we're all white. I'm not going to put I know this interview is with me, but I'm going to focus on, your channel and Tom's channel is another example of difference in the wrestling, media. You are doing something that's different, and you are doing something that's making people aware of what's possible, for people with accessibility issues. And that's why I love, and I hopefully I didn't cut you off, but I do want you to kind of finish this off, because I think you are a better representation of diversity in the wrestling scene than me, because the Gimme A Hull Yeah podcast, what we did when we first started out, Anthony was like, and we were like, we're not going to talk about my disability unless it gets brought up. You know what I mean? Whereas the first time you did a video, you were there talking about it, talking about your experiences, talking about what it was like. The same with Tom. So I think that, I'd rather watch you do interviews about wrestling personally than I would rather watch. Obviously, I'm doing them, so it's different. But I wouldn't want to watch a guy like me do it, because I could see a realistic. And I'm not trying to do my channel any disfavors. Please go and subscribe to Gimme A Hull Yeah. Please go and support Soundsphere if you check this out. I've worked really hard on it for a very long time. But I would rather watch people like you. I would rather, and when I say people, I mean I'd rather watch journalists and creatives, people with a different set of experiences doing interviews than I would people like, because it's different. It's interesting. It's fascinating to hear about your life experience. And in your interviews, it's fascinating to hear you talk and reflect to people and make people, this is what I say about your style, your interview style. You always make people think. And that's the beauty of this, man. That's the proper, pure reason we do journalism, is to make people think, to make people understand, or to empathize with somebody. You know what I mean? So anyway, I've gone off. This has become a fan. I've become a fan. I'm a huge fan of yours anyway, but I'm just going on about how great you are. So I apologize for going off topic.
That's more the line I was coming from, but I understood what you meant.
Yeah. So, sorry, I kind of went off on one. It's the ADHD. I just go off on a million tangents. But, yeah, going back to what you were saying, I'd love to see something like that. If you continue to use your channel to champion diversity in wrestling media, in sports, whatever, you are, again, you're a great host for it. You're a great host for it because people are going to come on your channel and people are going to view it and be like, well, I've never seen anything like this. You know what I mean? Which is wonderful.
I appreciate that, mate. But moving on
Yeah.
to wrestling stuff, because I do want to talk about a bit of wrestling before we start
course.
wrapping it up. So as you've just spoken about disability, do you think there'll ever be a disabled manager, or do you think that wouldn't really work because of the bad publicity they will get if something goes wrong?
Oh man, I think WWE would eat that up. I think they'd love it. I mean, you've got Zach Gowen, of course, who was an amputee back in the sort of 2000s, who's a in-ring performer. Gregory Irons has cerebral palsy. I know it doesn't affect his arm, I think, or his hand. He works for GCW. Now he's an in-ring performer. Your question was manager, and I'm aware of that. And there's no, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been a manager with a difference of disability. I'm assuming the manager would need to be on the microphone a bit more, would need to be a mouthpiece. So go on.
I don't mean to cut you off, but what I was thinking is save the like a hot angle, yeah. And involve the manager and a wrestler. Yeah. How are you really gonna play that off? Because it's not like you can beat up the person with cerebral palsy or in the wheelchair.
Well, dude, I mean, you've seen it before. Bret Hart was in it. I mean, obviously, Bret Hart wasn't actually. It was a fake injury, wasn't it? But Shawn Michaels super kicked Bret Hart when he was in a chair. You had Brock Lesnar attacking Zach Gowen. Zach Gowen obviously was an amputee when he was. He is an amputee. He's still active.
Yeah.
You had people attacking him. Vince McMahon, I think, bullied Zach Gowen on TV. I think WWE would relish the opportunity to do something with someone with a disability. It's just that right now, and maybe someone's coming up. Maybe we're going to see that in the next 5-10 years. I believe we will see wrestlers and managers with cerebral palsy in the industry more and more in the next few years. I think Zach Gowen has proven it's possible. Gregory Irons has proven it's possible. But at WWE, man, it's television, it's entertainment. They want the hate. They want it. They want people to be like, how could you put this person on TV and get them attacked? You think Triple H isn't going to relish the millions of hits that would get? This is what I mean. This is like, this goes beyond, like, because it's entertainment, innit? They'd clear it with the person before they did it, They'd clear it all before they'd go out there on TV. They'd be like, right, this person's going to kick. I think one of the examples with Zach, who is probably our best example from mainstream TV. I know Gregory Irons is on GCW, but that's not quite as mainstream yet.
Yeah.
I think they had like Vince McMahon kick the leg out from under Zach Gowen, the artificial leg, and that had, even in the days before, like, this was like 2004 or whatever it was. That was, the outrage that happened for that. But you think Zach Gowen knew that was happening. He knew it was happening. I think let's do. I've come up with a question for you, and I know we're going to have, but let me ask you this question. If Triple H called you up tomorrow, and he was like, Anthony, I'm a fan of your podcast. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send, who's the biggest heel at the moment? I'm going to send Austin Theory round to your house because we've got Clash at the Castle to promote. Okay, so Clash at the Castle's in Wales. I know you're not in Wales, but UK, right? So UK pay-per-view. We're going to send Austin Theory round, and we're going to have him beat you up with a steel chair in your bed. Would you say yes or would you say no?
I would be like, fuck yes.
Exactly. That's my point. That's what I mean. Entertainment. You right now. You are an entertainer. Right now, you are entertaining. You know, obviously, this is an interview that's going out in the future, but you're entertaining people now. You entertain people on your channel. If Triple H called you up and you had that segment on TV before Clash at the Castle, you would be a sports entertainer. And you said yes. That's what I'm talking about. You know, that's what I mean. They would discuss that with you. You'd know what was happening. You would be an entertainer, and everybody would be like, "Oh my God, how could they attack Anthony from the Anthony podcast? You've taken advantage of a disabled person, right?" But you would go viral. You better believe WWE would go viral, and as Triple H would say, what do you think he's going to say about that? That's best for business.
Oh, I was gonna say, he would say, like, good, keep, but that's somebody else is saying.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? It's funny. I'd love, you see, that's what I mean. I'd love to see it. If you said the same to me, would I allow someone in a WWE context? Would I allow someone to kick my sticks out from under me? Now that's a deep question. It's a deep. If that happened on the street, right? I'd be like, "What? I'd be like, "What are you doing, you dickhead?" Pardon my language. But if
just let you know, you can say whatever you want within reason, of course.
I forget, of course you can. I know, I do know that you've told me, but I was, I'm always careful. Yeah, like if Triple H called me and was like, "Hey Dom, we've got Clash of the Castle to promote, biggest UK pay-per-view in 30 years. I want you to go out to the ring and say, hey, people from Hull, anybody from Hull here, having a great time in Wales." And then Austin Theory's going to come out and he's going to low blow you and kick your sticks out from under you. Would you say yes? Yeah, I would. Same as you. And that's what I mean. Like, that's the why I think I've gone off topic, but you would, wouldn't you? Because it's entertainment, and but some people would take offense to that.
But what they could do is, they could, how they do like the press tours, me or you to kind what story you want to use. We could go on the media tour. We could defend our position.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I mean. Like but what I'm saying is that it goes back to my earlier point. Like, you're the best person to do what you're doing. You're the best person to give your perspective, and it just so happens there's not many people out on the YouTube, on wrestling YouTube like you doing what you're doing, and that can only work in your favor. You know what I mean? And it can only boost exposure. But then people might look at me and you and Tom as an extension, and they might go, "Well, are they using their disability to get more hits?" And that's the other question. That's the deeper question, isn't it?
Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah, I do.
So what? If you got something that makes you stand out, why can't you use it?
Absolutely, that's how I feel. I mean, you've got loads more. You've got more followers than we do, and you've got more hits and stuff. I mean, do you ever get? Because obviously I watch some of your videos, but I don't pay attention to the comments as much. Do you get any comments like that? Has anybody ever said you're using your disability for promotion or anything like that?
No, not really.
Good.
I do get a couple of awkward comments sometimes.
Right.
And this is gonna sound really bad, but they're not even that bad of comments, but the way some of them are worded, I just don't feel like responding to it. I just feel really, really demeaned.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've gone into a wider conversation here, and I'll try and be as short as possible. But I was speaking to Alicia Atu yesterday from MLW, obviously, AM and B, And she was saying, I was asking her about what it's like to be a woman in wrestling, and obviously because she gets loads of, she's a cool looking person, right? She's she's a very attractive person, and she gets comments all the time about, they're not about the quality of her content, they're about, oh, her hair looks good or something else looks good. And she said to me, if you have 5 followers or you have 5 million, you have to expect, whether it's 5 people or 5 million people, you're out in the public domain. So you're going to get comments. You're going to get comments down the line. And it was really interesting because I was like, yeah, if you want to put yourself out there like you do and like I do, people are going to say, well, I've had it before. I've had people saying, he speaks too, I had people saying he speaks too fast. I've had people saying he speaks too slow, and saying they should have got somebody able-bodied to do this because he's having trouble holding the microphone. I've had that before when I was doing face-to-face stuff. Like, I've not had anything really since YouTube, but like back in the day when I was doing face-to-face stuff, and that goes back to Alicia's point. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe those comments you got, and I'm not saying it's fair, I'm not saying it's right, but like, if you put yourself out in the domain, the public domain, you're going to get comments at you. Do you know what I mean? It's an interesting point.
And good to be clear, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying when I do get them weird comments or just awkward comments, I just choose to ignore them, because at the end of the day, if you respond to every comment that annoys you, you're gonna be there all day.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. No, you do right, and that's what Alicia said to me. She was like, "Just don't respond. Just don't respond to him because you're doing your own thing. You're doing your own thing, and you're doing it well. So why bother? Why care about what somebody that doesn't know you thinks? You know what I mean?"
But because going back to the disabled man, how I taught you, do you think that will come across well in promos, or do you think I might need to go to a speaking class?
Well, hang on. Let me find. Okay. Do you know Rosie Jones? Have you heard of Rosie Jones? She's a British comedian with cerebral palsy. Right?
Oh yeah, I know her.
Yeah. So you and I'm not making a direct example because, of course, it is. It's it's not. They're not the same. You can't just say that people are the same. But the speech is there. The slow speech and slower speech. You've got to. It depends on where you are, who it depends on who and it depends on who's trying to help you. So like Rosie obviously worked in, I think Grange Hill before she became a comedian, and like the team of people on those programs, now she does like, loads of stuff. Yeah. They're all supportive of disability. So I think it's more about who is where, do I think Triple H would say to you, would he say to you, you need to get a speech coach or something? Possibly. But the key is that he wouldn't say, I don't think he would say flat out. I mean, I don't know Triple H, but like he's employed, a lot of different people from diverse backgrounds over the years.
Yeah.
Would he consider you for a job? Yeah, probably. Because you're a talented lad. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's what you've got to think about. It depends on who you speak to, because some people will go like I was, I've been written off loads. I've been written off loads for TV. I've been on TV in Dubai. I've been on different TV little like, news programs normally, not like proper TV shows. I've been on news programs for things I've done. And like the staff there are supportive, but like I went to somebody on a radio show once and they were like, yeah, we're not ready for someone with cerebral palsy on a radio show. So it depends on who you speak to. Do you know what I mean? Could you be a good wrestling manager? Well, Rosie Jones is on TV representing programs. So yeah, I think you could be a good wrestling manager. It just depends on the person that's employing you and whether they're open-minded, I guess.
I think I would be a better manager than I would be a commentator, to be honest. I
Yeah.
think commentating I would find people, obviously you have to be quick, you have to be spontaneous, and sometimes the words get lost in my mind, and obviously that's not very good for a commentator.
Yeah. I understand what you mean. I understand what you're saying. I don't think I could be a commentator. You know what I mean? Because my brain just gets muddled. My thoughts get muddled all the time. But yeah, manager. Yeah, I think you could probably rock that, man. Yeah, 100%. I'd like to see that. Would you be a face or a heel though?
I think I would love to be a hero, just because I would love the challenge of getting the people to be a person with self-reporting, because it's easy to get a cheer. It's easy to get people to like you when you have a disability, I think. So I think I would like to be a hero, just so I can have a different challenge.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, man. Yeah, and you're right. People would get on your side as well. People would get on your side, I think, if you were a manager. Yeah, and they would, again, it would see something. It would be something different on television. You would be representing a part of the community, the disabled community that was underrepresented, arguably on television. So people would flock behind you if you were a manager. I think. Yeah, I think it'd be great.
So a couple more questions, and then we start wrapping it up.
Go for it, man. Go for it.
So have you ever interviewed Nick Dinsmore, obviously more popularly known as Eugene?
No, I haven't, but I've watched a bit of Tom's interview with him. I think that was a great idea. I'd like to see. I'd like, I'd love to see, for example, you interviewing Eugene as well and getting that deep conversation. But I enjoyed what Tom did. I thought it was really, really cool because again, it gets a different perspective of someone that was playing someone with a difference, with a disability on television. And it was interesting to see that point. But I've never interviewed him, no. But I will consider it, and I'd like to. You know what? The more I think about it, the more I think I'd like to do it. Yeah, I'd love to do it one day.
It's nothing personal against him. At the end of the day, everybody needs work, yeah. But when I think about the Eugene character now, I really don't like it, because obviously I know people with learning difficulties, and I just don't think it was right. I just feel like they presented it in completely the wrong way.
Yeah, I would agree. I think WWE, I think they've distanced themselves from the Eugene character over the years. But yeah, I agree. I think it was insensitive at the time. But like you said, over the last 5-10 years, and obviously Eugene was much longer than that now. The last time we saw Eugene, over the last 5-10 years, people have become much more sensitive, much more aware of difference and disability. So would they do Eugene now? Would they promote Eugene now? No, I don't think they would. I don't think they would do the Eugene character now.
As I said, just to be clear, I don't blame Nick anymore, because at the end of the day, if somebody comes to you and say we want you to play this disabled character, to put it in a polite way, you are gonna say yes if you want to be a wrestler that badly on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly like we said earlier. But it is interesting looking at Eugene's representation on YouTube now, and the amount of stuff that WWE actively pushes. There's very few little things. Obviously, there's loads of Eugene videos, loads of Eugene videos about, there, but very few WWE ones. And it is interesting because maybe, I think they've possibly tried to distance themselves from that Eugene character. But like you said, exactly like me and you both during the course of this interview have said we would work for WWE, right? And like you said, Nick Dinsmore just trying to make some money, Do you begrudge him making money? No. But do you think the character representation was wrong? Absolutely.
But at the same time, you can't really blame somebody if they do resent Nick Dinsmore, because at the end of the day, it's all about perspectives, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate. It is, everything is perspective. Everything is perspective, man. Yeah.
So moving on to like in charge of WWE Creative, I have not seen it. I haven't seen every single stream that you've done, but for the most part, have you been enjoying it, or is it not for you?
No, it's a great question, man. Like, I've loved it. I am now a solid WWE guy again, right? I was always a WWE guy, and as you know, my Anthony Nalen is a solid AEW guy. He thinks that the AEW is the best thing since sliced bread, but he's hardcore into wrestling. Well, you got to say he's into the pure form of wrestling. Bryan Danielson, like 60-minute Iron Man matches, and me, as you know, I like characters. I like Bray Wyatt. I want the Fiend to return. And I like, Dexter Lumis being all creepy on Raw and NXT, and Dexter Lumis is back, So for me, I'm so happy Triple H is ahead of creative. I think that Vince's ideas, obviously not discussing his extracurricular activities, which he's being investigated for. I think his ideas were outdated. I think he's, as anybody who builds a company is, he found it very difficult to let go of, and his ideas became outdated. And now, through one reason or another, he's now not there anymore, and Triple H has taken over. A fresh pair of eyes, a different set of experiences, a better perception of what, our age group and younger are interested in wrestling and in sports entertainment. It can only be a good thing, man. Only be a good thing.
I think it's fair to say Vince was never a wrestling fan. Triple H is a wrestling fan in many respects. Like Triple H loves the NWA and things like that old school sort of stuff. But he's trying to relive them days over. He's like trying to modernize them in a way,
Yeah, you've said exactly what I was trying to say in a much better way. The crux is, right, who are the better people to train, because before Triple H came into power, there was all this stuff about, they were bringing in recruits with no prior wrestling experience, right? They'd never been in, they were just being trained because of how they looked and their aesthetic. And that's fine, but there was a lot of injuries at that tryout, right?
Yeah.
Who better to train the next generation than guys like Johnny Gargano, who they've just brought back? Guys that are on the main roster now, like Tommaso Ciampa, guys that have done independence, guys that have been there, guys that have seen it. Vince McMahon he was always about aesthetic. He was always about the way something looked, right? But under the Triple H era, you've got more chance of more, independent wrestlers that have given their heart and soul to the business for 15 years and maybe beyond that. You know what I mean? But, get them getting opportunities, but then also them being used to train new people, to train new wrestlers that have not got any experience.
Yeah.
It makes better business sense to have Triple H in charge. And it always did. If I was Vince McMahon, and I, obviously I don't know what it's like to run a multi-billion-dollar business, but it goes back to what we were saying earlier. I know that sometimes I am not the best person to make certain choices, right? I am not the best person to do certain things. And if I was Vince McMahon a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have put Triple H in charge, because he has a better understanding of what's going on now. Whereas Vince McMahon still thinks, in my opinion, that it's the 80s. You know what I mean?
I am a bit worried about Triple H, because he's in his 50s. I would like to have seen somebody in the 30s come into the role, to be honest. I understand why you probably can't have somebody in their 30s do that job, because you need somebody that can manage all of them egos. Let's be honest, wrestlers are egotistical.
Yeah. Well, they're performers, and everybody who's a performer has an element of ego, I think.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just something that I don't think people put enough credit into, like the whole CM Punk controversy at the moment. I'm not surprised, because at the end of the day, CM Punk has a big ego, and and obviously that's just wrestling.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it? But I am of the opinion that nobody is bigger than the company they work for. Effectively, and this is what and I get why CM Punk is, I get why he's a personality. He's got but he's got an ego. But nobody's bigger than the company they work for, man. CM Punk is an employee of Tony Khan. So fundamentally, CM Punk might be more famous than Tony Khan is. He might be more well known, but Tony Khan's paying his check. So go on.
Well, but what didn't allow Tony Khan's case is when you go into a media environment, and say Punk, as you say, CM Punk is the reason why the company makes money or whatever he said. Because then you basically tell Punk he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that was Tony Khan's mistake. And I think that's why, again, that's why I think WWE is better than AEW. And I have always, even though I had a period of time where I didn't watch Raws and I didn't watch SmackDowns, and I only watched AEW because it was the better product. It was the better product. But in my heart, I will always believe WWE is the better product all round. Tony Khan is a fan of the business, and I respect that. But I think that, and I've got to be careful, because I am aware that I do more work these days with AEW than I do WWE. But I am more of a fan than of WWE as a fan. They've been, the AEW have been fantastic to us from a business perspective, giving us interviews. But as a fan, I'm more of a fan of WWE, because I think that it's more of a business. It's run as a business. WWE is run as a business. And I think AEW is run by the fans and for the fans. And that isn't best for business. I sound like I've got Triple H in my ear, don't I? Because I'm always saying best for business. But AEW is by the fans and for the fans, which is awesome. It's great. But does it work as a business model? We'll have to see. Whereas WWE has run as a business for what, 60 years? Please do, anybody in the comments, do correct me on my time. But a long time it's run as a business.
The last thing I would say on this topic is I'm under no illusions that WWE did have a lot of problems from a creative aspect, in my opinion. But do I enjoy Monday Night Raw now? Yes.
Good.
And at the end of the day, that is my main priority. I don't get hung up on the ratings. Cause at the end of the day, it's not my money.
Absolutely, it's not your money, and it's not mine either. And that's why we can talk like this. That's why we can talk about this, which is great. That's why it's great. Why wrestling is great. Why being on the Anthony podcast is great, because we can just talk about the stuff we love and we can debate. And there's very few people in this world that I like debating with. That I like debating with more than you. You are a thinking. You are a thinking wrestling fan. I love talking about wrestling with you, man, because I get real deep. I get real deep about it.
I just want to say very quickly, I know you're a fan of Bray Wyatt, but I really don't want to see him return, because toward the end there, I got a bit tired of all the spooky bollocks, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
So did I. Yeah, so did I. I get it. But I also think he's one of the more creative minds in the business. I think he's one of the fact that we're talking, the fact that you even brought Bray Wyatt up. I know you did it because I'm a fan, but he's still in conversations a year after he has gone and he's not been seen, not done anything. That's a testament to how good he is. Like the spooky bollocks, the Fiend stuff. I could take or leave that if it came back. But Vince McMahon didn't like it. Do I think the Fiend would be better under Triple H? Do I think there'd be less spooky bollocks and more psychological? Yes. And that's what it needs to be. It needs to be like a Mankind, like a Mick Foley. It needs to be a personality, an alter ego. You know, the Fiend needs to be something Bray Wyatt brings out, like Mick Foley brought out Cactus Jack. And that I believe is the future of that character under Triple H.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon wanted spooky bollocks, and when Vince McMahon is gone, you know.
Let's just play out a scenario. Let's just say if the Fiend does come back.
Yes.
Just stand the Fiend. Do you think they already have characters like Karrion Kross and Dexter Lumis that are in similar sort of ballpark? Do you think that could be a bit over a saturation?
No, depends how, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because this is how I would book him, right? The how popular and how globally renowned is Mick Foley?
Yeah.
Right? How big is Mick Foley? How big a deal?
He's known all over the world.
Right. Okay. So if you bring Bray Wyatt back and say, obviously they wouldn't say copy it, but if you say just do what Mick Foley did, right? Your Fiend is your Cactus Jack, right? Your Funhouse Bray, you know, the jumper wearing, is your Dude Love, and your Swamp Bray, you know, your original Bray Wyatt is your Mankind. Go and do that, right? That has layers in it that Dexter Lumis doesn't have and that Karrion Kross doesn't have. Karrion Kross effectively is a dark character that beats people up. He's just a dark character that is, you know, he's going to destroy you in the ring, right? Dexter Lumis is a guy who's playing a stalker, effectively, right? He's a big dude that paints weird pictures that is a stalker, right? If you say to Bray Wyatt, give me 3 personalities, give me layers. There's layers to that character. Dexter Lumis is a stalker, fundamentally. Karrion Kross is a twisted character that's going to beat you up and is probably, you know, he's hard and he's tough. He's a tough guy that's going to beat you up, right? Bray Wyatt has layers, Anthony. Bray Wyatt has layers. So if Bray Wyatt comes back and you ask me if I compare him to Dexter Lumis, no. Dexter Lumis's character is great. Dexter Lumis doesn't need to change anything, right? Whether Bray Wyatt's there or not, he doesn't need to change anything. Neither does Karrion Kross. When Mick Foley was there was also The Undertaker, right? Dark, weird character, right? Gangrel was there when Dude Love was there. He was a freaking vampire. Right? So is there room for the 3 of them? fuck yeah, there's room for the three of them, right?
I,
Yeah, that's my answer to your question.
I love your question.
I've been asked. My Anthony Nayland on the Gimme A Hull Yeah podcast. He berates me all the time. He thinks, you know, it's all spooky bollocks. He'll say the same thing. But what you got to understand, because I'm a really big fan of the character, is, you know, there's fucking layers there, man. There's layers there that you haven't even that we haven't even seen. There's layers there we haven't even seen yet, right? Bray Wyatt isn't the next Undertaker. He's the next Mick Foley. He's the next Mick Foley. He will be a globally renowned superstar, a Hall of Famer. I guarantee you this. Like, if I died and I went on record saying this, and people came back the years later and said Dom got one thing right, one thing in life right, it'll be that Bray Wyatt is a future Hall of Famer. Mark my words.
So you think if Bray wanted to, he could be like that. He could be in the creative room.
Yes, I do. Because of Triple H. Because Triple H has worked with some of the strongest minds. I know Bray Wyatt was difficult to work with. I heard all the reports. But Triple H worked with Shawn Michaels. Triple H has worked with The Rock. Triple H has worked with Stone Cold, man. He's seen it. Triple H is great. I'm a big fan of Triple H. He will do, and I'll say it for the 50th time, he will do what's best for business. And what's best for business, Anthony, is to bring Bray Wyatt back and have him in the creative room, have him come up with his stories. And if he's got an ego on him, if Bray Wyatt's got an ego on him, which he has, like you said, all wrestlers have egos, Triple H will know how to manage that because he's done it all. Do you think The Rock didn't have a huge ego, or Stone Cold, or any of the celebrities that have come in for cameos? He's done it all, man. He knows how to deal with Bray Wyatt. He knows how to let him be creative, but keep him within sports entertainment parameters. The future is bright. The future is bright for wrestling fans, and it's bright for Bray Wyatt fans as well.
And somebody that you interviewed, Raven, one of the many criticisms of Raven, he could write for himself, but he couldn't really write for other people, like as a writer. Do you think that could be the case with Bray?
I've misinterpreted your question. Yeah. Okay. Right. So I interpreted your question as, will Bray be able to work on his character? Will Bray be able to work on his character with Triple H? Yes. Would he be able to write for other people on the writing team? I don't think so. I think your comparison is great. I think there's a lot of similarities between Raven and Bray. Bray Wyatt, if given, creative freedom to a point with Triple H for his character, will be wonderful, right? But like you said, do I think Bray Wyatt can write for other people? I don't know, man. Was Mick Foley ever in the writing team? No.
No, not really.
No, he worked on the screen because he was a great on-screen talent. Same with Bray. Bray's an on-screen talent. He'll be an on-screen talent for the next 10 years. Maybe he'll be a manager after that. Like Raven. Raven was Johnny Polo. And he was given a backstage role and all this other stuff. But he was he was a manager before he was anything else.
Yeah.
He was a better on-screen talent than he was a writer. You're right. Raven wasn't a writer for other people. He was a character.
What would you like interviewing Raven? Because when I watched the interview, I thought it was a good interview. But when you look back on it now, did you think it was a good interview, or did you think you could have done a little bit better, or what did you think?
That's a really good question, because Raven was number one. Like, there's a bucket list of musicians I've got, right? And one of the top of that list, I've interviewed everybody else I've ever wanted to interview, but there's one band that I've not interviewed, and that's 9 Inch Nails. They're my favorite band of all time, 9 Inch Nails. Now, Raven was the top of my list, aside from Mick Foley. And I've interviewed Mick Foley before, on the phone, on the phone for a piece on Soundsphere, which you can check out if you go on Soundsphere's website, for a written piece. But yeah, on camera, I never thought I'd interview Raven. Do I think could have been better? Yeah, I would have liked more time. He only had. I made him go overtime. Obviously, you don't see this stuff on the interview, but he only had half an hour, and he went over by 15 minutes because we were enjoying the conversation, but it was rushed. In fact, that interview was rushed because he had somewhere to be. He had somewhere to go afterwards. So would I like more time with him? Yes. But am I proud of what we did? Absolutely. And I've been asking myself this a lot recently. And if I was interviewing you, I would ask you the question, what do you think about legacy? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? And if I ever interview you again, which I'm sure I will give you that question.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'll answer that quickly now. I just want people when I die to say Anthony achieved something with his life, and he just didn't sit in the corner. I feel like sometimes, obviously, sometimes not because of anything they've done, but some disabled people aren't as able to do stuff, so they do end up just sitting in the corner. And that's the one thing I never wanted to be, because I have said before in my videos, I was supposed to be non-verbal. So why would I waste my opportunity of talking and not do anything?
Absolutely, mate. And that's what you've done, and that's why it's so wonderful. And I'm kind of similar, I wasn't even supposed to be here, my mum, my mum and I could have died, and I was supposed to be in a chair. I'm supposed to be in a chair right now, a wheelchair. And yeah, I very much the same as you. Like, I just wanted my dad, he's a pretty quiet person, right? He's a he works hard. He's a very quiet person, and he doesn't say a lot of things, but when he does say stuff, it usually means something. And he once said to me, and some people would take this as an insult, but I took it as a compliment. He said to me, "You've exceeded all of our expectations for you." Sorry, my dog Lou is in the background. He wants to get on the podcast. But yeah, like my dad said, "You've exceeded all of our expectations," and I like to think that I've exceeded people's expectations of what they think I'm capable of and what they think of people with disabilities are capable of. That's all I want to do. So very much the same as you and your answer. I want to do things that people. I've made a whole life of doing stuff people said I couldn't do, whether that was climbing mountains or, I've climbed some mountains in Italy, or traveling to places, or having weird and wonderful sexual experiences, all of it, right? I've done stuff that people said I couldn't do my entire life. And I kind of want my legacy to be that. Same as you. I want to do something. I want to leave a mark. And if my mark is that I was on your podcast, then I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of being here with you. I'm very proud that someone like yourself, with a channel as popular as yours is, wants to talk to me. I'm privileged that I got to speak to Raven. I'm privileged that I got to do that. And I'm so lucky to have done the things I've done. And it's because of people like yourself and people like Tom and people who have given me a platform to talk about things that I love. And yeah, going back to that legacy question, I'm proud of the Raven interview. I'm glad we did it. I wish it was longer, but I always wanted to do it. And I never thought I would. I never thought I would do it, tying it into that whole expectation thing. I never thought I would do it, and I did. And that was something I always wanted to do.
Was Raven one of your favourites?
Absolutely. Top 3 of all time, right? Top 3 of all time. Mick Foley, number 1. I interviewed Mick Foley. 2, Raven. And I interviewed Raven. You saw it. Got one more on the list. It's Bray Wyatt. So maybe one day, man.
I would say my three are Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, and I would. The third one is probably a good one in theory, but I don't know whether it will come across very well. CM Punk, I know it can be a bit, awkward in times in interviews.
Best in the world, mate. He's the best in the world, and I believe he is one of the best of all time. I love CM Punk for his personality, I mean, how he gets people talking. All this stuff the last week, whether it could be a work, could be a massive work. We don't know if they're just faking it for news. The MJF stuff is another example. Like, it could all be a massive work. We don't know if CM Punk is actually unhappy in AEW. But the point is, it's got us talking. It's got us talking.
I understand that. I'm just saying, when I watch interviews with him, even before he went to AEW, sometimes I know people can be off anyway, but sometimes it can be really standoffish in interviews.
Yeah, you're right, but that's all part of his. That's his thing, isn't it? If maybe he's having a bad day, or maybe it's character. Maybe he's thinking about how he comes across. You never know. But that's a great top three. Danielson, Punk, and Joe. You see, you're like my Anthony Nalen. He's a very technical. He laughs at my top three. He says I'm ridiculous to have Raven and Bray and Foley in my top three. Although Mick Foley actually is his favorite wrestler of all time. But he thinks Bray Wyatt's silly and he thinks Raven is silly. So you and him, if you had a conversation with Anthony Nalen, you'd probably get on really well, because you'd be like, "Oh, Bray Wyatt, spooky bollocks," and Dom's stupid to all that spooky bollocks. But yeah,
I think Bryan Danielson is the best of all time.
He's the best wrestler of all time.
I think he's better than Michaels. I think he's better than Flair.
I agree. I think you're right. As a wrestler, he's the best wrestler of all time. Who's the best character of all time? The best character, I think it's Mick Foley.
Probably, I can say the Undertaker, just for his longevity.
You're right. You're probably right there. Yeah, I think Mick Foley's up there though for a lot of people. But yeah, I would say you're probably right. I think Mick Foley, just because I've got a special place in my heart for him. Because he got me through a lot of pain. His character got me through a lot of pain in a time when I was in hospital a lot. So I have that kind of love for Mick Foley. But you're probably right in terms of character. You're probably right. It's probably the Undertaker for most people.
Did you tell him that when you spoke to him?
I did.
What was his response?
He said thank you. He said thank you for telling me. He gets a lot of compliments like that, but he said thank you for telling me. I appreciate it.
Sorry, I expected some deep response.
Yeah, well, we're in it. It's one of those things with those things. You're doing an interview, so you're there and you're there to talk to him. I was doing his comedy tour, but it was lovely to speak to him. We had some deep moments talking about performance and talking about his characters. I don't tend to that's the wrong term. I don't tend to fanboy that much because it changes the perception. So like I've never gone into an interview, even with someone that I've loved, and gone, I love you. You know what I mean? You're like the reason I get up in the morning. Because if I was to get deep with you in a way that I couldn't with Mick Foley, because I had I think it was 20 minutes or something I had with Mick Foley. So there was a lot, I have a lot of time, but it was the 20 minutes I had with him was wonderful. But if I was going to get deep with you, I'd be like, he was the reason I got up in the morning. If you look at how I grew up, right? I was bullied a lot, I didn't look cool, I didn't look like Shawn Michaels. I looked more like Mick Foley. Yeah. I limped in the same way that Mankind did. Yeah. I had the same kind of hunchback that Mankind did. I was a weirdo, but because he was on TV, and because he was doing what he was doing, it gave me a reason to get up, you know? And if I tell you now, if I was to tell you about, if I was to recap, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to cry. But if I was to tell you what it felt, if I was to talk about the first time I saw him win that title, you know, when Stone Cold came down and hit the stunner on the Rock and he won the title for the first time, if I was to go deep on that, I'd start crying now because every single time, because like seeing that made me think I could do anything. Even though it's a character, I know it was a character, but the underdog, the guy that didn't look he didn't look like Shawn Michaels, he didn't look like The Rock, but he captured the hearts and minds of everyone because he was the guy that you believed could do it, even though he had everything stacked against him, even though he, you know, the character was, you know, what was it? He lived in a cellar, he lived in a basement with the character, right? Even though he lived in a basement, he could still be a world champion. Even though he had he didn't have an ear, he could be a world champion. And that made me think, well, I've got weird legs, but maybe I can do something to change somebody else's life in the way that they've changed mine. You know, in the way that Mick Foley changed my life, maybe I could change somebody else's like that. And I'll tell you one example on record and then I'll finish talking because I know it's your channel. But I once played a show with my band in Germany. I was in a punk band a long time ago called the Parasitic Twins. We were grindcore, really heavy, horrible music, but you know, really heavy metal. But in Germany, it was popular, and it also turned out to be popular in Asia because I got to go and play Taiwan. But I went on stage in Germany I can't remember the town, and I came off, and this guy came up to me and he said, "I've taken a video of you play it because my wife is at home and my wife has a disability, and she has, I think, because you know he had broken English, he couldn't speak very good English. He said she has, you know, shit legs, you know." And I laughed. Because I was listening, I was trying to pay attention.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm going to take this video home to my wife. And I'm going to show her you playing drums because I want her to see that you can do things even if you have shit legs, you know?" And like that to me was like, I know it's not a global thing. It's not, you know, we played to about 60 people that night, but like, it's not a global thing, but like, I changed somebody's perspective that night, you know? And like that is what, talk about legacy. That is what I want. I want someone to go home from seeing me out or seeing me out and about or watching an interview that I've done and go, well, if Dom can do that, so can I. That's all I want.
That's why I gravitate towards people like Brian Danielson and Samoa Joe and CM Punk, because their stories inspire me. Obviously, I'm never going to be a wrestler, but because of their work ethic, it inspires me in whatever I'm doing in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've inspired other people. And I don't mean to pedestal you in that way. I know we've spoken about this before, and it's not because you've got a disability, man. You know, I'll level with you on that. Like, I just like your interviews. Like, I think you're a really good interviewer because you take time to listen to people in a way that sometimes I forget to. You really listen to people, which is the key to being a good interviewer. And you ask thoughtful questions from people's responses. Like, you don't just have, you know, excuse me. You don't just have stock questions you have to ask people, right? And I come from that because I've obviously worked for different organizations before I started Soundsphere. I come from, you've got to get this point across. You've got to get this point across. You've got to ask this question. And like, what I like about you is like, you respond to every response with a good question, a thought out question. And that's why, and I'm not comparing you to CM Punk, dude. I'm not comparing you to your favorite wrestlers. But if you're talking about a legacy and you're talking about inspiring people, like you've inspired a lot of people, and you've I know you probably don't think about it from this interview, and people will probably laugh if they listen to me on this interview because I've just talked for an hour and a half at a very quick pace. But like, you helped me learn, really appreciate the value of silence and listening to people, because I've noticed very rarely, and when you do, you apologize as well. But and it's not, it's just interesting because very rarely do you interrupt people unless you've got, you know, a key point to make. And that is the number one skill as a journalist that I believe you need, is you are there to tell a story. And that's why you're so good, because you listen, you reflect, and you respond with a question. And I've always struggled with that.
I know I said this to you before, but I feel really awkward when people,
I know.
when people put me over. You
I know. I'm still going to do it. I'm still putting you over, man.
I appreciate that. So, my final question is, the last time we did the interview, I think it was in 2020, or it might have been early 2021. From that point until now, what do you think you've improved on, either personally or in your career?
It's a good question. So I've fully qualified as a counselor now, as a therapist. So that is a part of my life that I'm getting into, because I'm a fully qualified counsellor and therapist now. I have become a better listener because of that, and because of watching you. A bit, you know, I still talk a million miles a minute, but I'm better at listening than I was. That's personally and professionally.
Pardon me.
No, it's okay. I'm happier because I'm more content. I spent a lot of time, and Raven and I talked about this, like about how like you look at yourself sometimes. Like he looked at his WWE career and thought he was a failure, but he forgot about all the success he had in ECW and all the success he had in TNA. And he was like, I'm content now because I've realized that I am a success and I did well. Right. So,
Yeah.
and since the last time you spoke to me, I used to compare myself to other people. I used to think I'm not successful in compared to X, Y, and Z YouTuber or X, Y, and Z journalist. But I realized that I am my own person with my own experiences and my own interviews and my own style. And I am content with my body of work. If I passed, my partner Emma always kicks my ass when I say this, because she's like, don't say stuff like that. But I'm like, if I died tomorrow, would I be happy with my life and what I've done? You know, the legacy I've left. You know, if this was my last appearance, hypothetically, would I be happy with this? You know, the last, you know, and I'd be like, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. Because people like you with valuable opinions, with interesting thoughts, give a enough of a fuck about what I've got to say to ask me to come on their show. And that makes me feel important. It makes me feel special, and not in an ego way, but like I am now content with myself. I am content with my legacy and content with my life, because it's good enough for me and it's good enough to be on your show, which is awesome. I never thought I was good. I used to think I was never good enough to be on something like the Anthony podcast. And here I am talking to you on here for the second time, and I feel awesome because my life is cool. I've done some great interviews with people that I never thought I'd get to speak to. I've got people like yourself that I count as friends, not only as people that I admire on a professional level. I believe, you know, I count you as a mate. I think I admire what you do, and I'm happy with my life. So if and Emma's out at the moment, which is why I can get away with saying this. She's out on a walk. She'll kick my ass when she watches this back. If I died tomorrow, I'd be very happy with the legacy I've left. But if I don't, and hopefully I won't, there's still more work to do, man. You know?
As human beings, yeah, why do you think we always why do you think we always compare ourselves to other people?
That's an excellent question. Why do I think we compare ourselves to other people? Well, it's built in, isn't it? Do you think like when we were cavemen, do you think like, people would bring back the logs or something, for fire? And
Yeah.
like, would that person look at that other person and go, well, their log is bigger than mine, or like, and it goes back to that, doesn't it? It goes back to that, it's built in.
There's so many central in
And there is. That's why I said the log thing. But yeah, I think it's innate. It's built in. We've always done it. And I think the only way to stop it is to be content, to learn to be content with yourself. And it's taken me 36 years to get to this point, to be content with who I am.
Like, and you know what Raven said? Harry can't really watch the product because he can't separate himself from the product. Do you think that's the case in everything? Like, do you think when the musician retired, do you think they suffer with the same sort of thing?
Yes, yeah. Which is why a lot of them become producers. A lot of them, in the same way you can be a wrestling producer, you can be a music producer.
Yeah.
So a lot of musicians, until they die, they will work in the industry because they'll go on to produce other people's music or engineer it, or very rarely. I mean, I don't know many musicians that just work as a musician. That just, they're always doing something else in music. It's a lifestyle, man. The same way journalism is a lifestyle. The same way that I am. The same way that you're interviewing me now, and you'll go on to interview other people, and you do it because you love it. It's a lifestyle for you, man. Like, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but like, you love interviewing people, right?
Yeah.
You probably won't stop. You can't imagine a time where you stop doing it, right?
Well, to be honest with you, if there was a bigger opportunity, to present a series like on Netflix or something, or like a TV show, then I would stop doing it. But for the most part,
that wasn't my question. Because you would still be working as a presenter. You would still be you maybe still be interviewing people for Netflix, right? So I'm talking about, could you not tell someone's story? Could you stop talking to people? Could you stop interacting with people and do something else? Or do you need to tell stories? Do you need to share stories with people?
No, because I'm doing inquisitive, or you can say I'm doing nosy.
That's the point. That's what I'm saying. Whether you're working for Netflix or you're working for the Anthony podcast, you're still doing the same thing. You're still telling stories, man. You're still helping people promote their work, telling their story, giving them a platform. It's just that, the Anthony podcast has a few thousand subscribers and Netflix has a few more. But like, you'd still be doing the same thing. So that's what I mean. It's the same thing. I don't think I could ever stop doing this because I love it so much. And it's the same as you.
So I think that's the problem right there. We did go a bit over time because I had a certain planned time date in my mind, but
right.
We had a nice chat, and I hope I didn't disturb your evening too much.
Nah, man, I love talking to you. I mean, I shouldn't have. I've got this really heavy, warm corduroy shirt on, which I wish I'd taken off, but I didn't want to show too much skin on your podcast. I didn't want to show too much arm and skin, but I'm really hot because it's a really warm room that I'm in. So I apologize if I've been sweating the whole time. But aside from that, I've had a great time. I love talking to you. It's more like a conversation. Like I have to struggle. I have to stop myself from asking you questions and interviewing you and turning it into an interview with you when we talk, because I just like talking to you. So yeah, I love it, mate. I love it. Anytime. I'll do a show with you every day of the week, mate.
Do you know, one day I would love to do a weekly MMA show or like a weekly wrestling show, for example, because I just like having sensible debate with people. 'Cause I don't know whether you like MMA, but I talk about MMA a lot on my channel. Just to because I find like a lot of disabled people, not obviously not every single one of them, but a lot of them like boxing and MMA and things like that. Why do you think that is?
Because, well, and that is it. I've never been asked that question. Again, that's why you're so good. Why do I think that is? Well, let me put it this way. If you poked me in the chest, I would fall backwards, right? There's nothing I could do to stop myself from falling backwards. If you just poked me with your strength or whatever. And I wonder if it's because I know a lot of tough people with disabilities, a lot of really hard people that could totally beat me up. But would they ever fight in a boxing ring? Would they have the ability to? I don't know. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to say no, because that's. Yeah, there's probably. I mean, in the same way there's disabled wheelchair basketball. There's probably I don't know if there's wheelchair boxing, but there probably is. I think there probably is. So will there be wheelchair MMA somewhere down the line? Probably. I could see it happening. But why do we like fighting? I would probably say, well, this is what you can see. I haven't been asked this question before because I'm really thinking about it.
Sorry.
I would have said it's because it's something we don't do very often. You know, people with disabilities, in my experience, tend to use words or tend to use their intellect to win arguments or to, you know, get themselves out of a hostile situation because, you know, maybe they're in a chair and they can't. And not that I'm endorsing violence. I'm not saying that violence is good at all. But maybe it's just because we can. Man, that is such a good question.
You think
Why do you think it is?
You think it's going to be a really basic answer, but do you think it's because we can live vicariously through the fighters? So say for example, if we have a bad day at work or school or whatever, or we just have a bad day period, we can live vicariously through the fighters.
Yes. That's an excellent answer. That is an excellent answer and way better than anything I could have come up with. Absolutely. That's what I was trying to say. And you just said it. Again, you know what I was telling you about? This is proof that I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass when I tell you all these compliments, because you just prove what I've said. That's what I mean. You say things, you think about things in a way that's concise and thoughtful, in a way that I'll just be like, but maybe it's this, and maybe it's this, but it could be this. And you're just like, this is it. It's because we can live vicariously through the fighters. That's what I think, but you just said it better than me.
Like, you know, if I'm an able body, I have no doubt in my mind, you know, in my mentality, I would have at least tried to train MMA. I doubt whether I would do any good at it, but I would have tried at least. Same thing with wrestling. I would look to take a bump in the wrestling ring, but I know that's not possible.
Same. So I'd love to do it. You're right. Again, it's interesting, isn't it? Me and you would both do it, but it would be we'd probably break something, you know. So like, yeah. But I'd love to try it. Yeah, interesting. What an interesting question. Ask that to other people, because I want to know what other people think.
I would love it to ask the fighters, but I'm gonna be honest. A lot of fighters, I'm not gonna say they're not smart, but they don't really think like deeply about things like that. They're more like just yes or no answers. So that's fine, but when it comes to a podcast, that isn't really enough to have an engaging conversation, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's interesting because I sometimes wonder, like, why because like we worked with WWE for a bit, you know, and we're doing AEW stuff now. But like, and I always Impact have always been good to us. We've always worked with Impact, but WWE stopped working with us for a while. I've just got back in touch with them now to maybe do some stuff. Obviously, I am actively doing interviews with AEW, but there seems to be again this focus on music questions. They want me to ask loads of music questions, but yeah, I ask deep questions of wrestlers, and maybe they don't want that. Maybe that's why I don't do more and more stuff with you, because I ask like how you define success and what do you want your legacy to be, and maybe they just want so how do you feel about this pay-per-view, or how do you feel about this fight? You know what I mean?
Or you're working with this person, I do think that will go. They just want the headline pieces, don't they?
Yeah, maybe that's it. See, this is what I mean. I wouldn't thought about that until you asked me that, till you asked me that question. Again, an example of why I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass, Anthony. But that's made me think, because you're right. A lot of these people in these podcasts, they want yes or no, or they want, the fight's going to be intense. I'm ready to kick their ass. But like, it eats into the time, doesn't it? Of course it eats into the time. If you've got like 10, 20, well, maybe 5 minutes. With WWE, it's like 10 minutes max. Like, it eats into the time if you ask them a deep question about their life, or like, what they think about success or whatever,
And it's not the performer's fault, is it? Like sometimes it might be, but a lot of the time it's just the way it works. Like if they have 50 interviews to do that day, they can't spend half an hour with you, can they?
No, you're right.
No offense.
You're right. No, you're right. Maybe it's a lesson to me, mate. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. I love talking. This is what I mean. Maybe I need to think more about.
Do you know this guy came to me and said you can interview Conor Benches, for example. I don't know whether you know that is, but he's a pretty big boxer in the UK.
Right.
And they said you only have 5 minutes. I probably would just do headline questions.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to waste this opportunity to get more experience interviewing and to build my name. Because if I do a good job with that interview, maybe can get a bigger one down the line.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely, yeah. 100%. 100% agree with you, mate.
So I want to thank you. Tom. Did I just call you Tom? I meant Tom, obviously.
It's okay, man. Don't worry.
I think this is one of the best interviews I've done. I don't feel like I started a lot. So
you've been great, man. You've been. I love, like I say, I love the conversation. It's you make it feel like a conversation rather than an interview, whether you're doing half an hour or an hour or whatever, and that's great, because I consider you a friend, and we don't get to speak all the time, but that's because you make me feel welcome, man. I love it. I've really enjoyed this, and you've done great too. You've been clear. I've understood everything you've said. You've been fantastic, mate.
Because in our previous interview, I felt like I was panicking sometimes for some reason. And I think over the last couple of months, even in my solo videos, I've just realised you speak how you speak, and who gives a fuck. At the end of the day, it's not going to be life or death.
Absolutely. And I think there's something in that, just quickly, to remember, because you are right now and in the future, you're a personality, right? You are a personality. Like Alicia Atu was talking about how like she went from being a journalist to a character on MLW TV as a heel. And I asked her about that process and how she did that. And she was like, I realized I am a personality. I have a personality to share with the world that's bigger than just being a journalist. Right. And I think you have that too. Like you have a personality that it hooks people in because of your questions. Like, you are a journalist, but you're bigger than you're a personality. You're a YouTube personality. I don't know how that feels to hear, but you're a journalist and a YouTube personality, because your interviews are more than just interviews. You know what I mean? Because your passion for storytelling comes across. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, for I feel like, you know, the question that I asked you about why do a lot of disabled people like fighting? I don't think many people would have even thought about that.
Nobody. No, I've never thought about it. I've maybe wondered it. This is, again, why it's such a good question. I've thought about it in my head, right? Maybe in passing, maybe watching a wrestling event, maybe once, you know, I've gone, oh man, why do disabled people like fighting so much? Why do I have so many disabled friends that are into wrestling? And then it's gone off to another thought. But turning it into a question, that's a stroke of genius. Like, I want to know what Tom thinks about that. I want to know what there are other YouTube personalities with disabilities as well. I think it's Ryan Felice, who works at Fightful, has cerebral palsy as well. I just want to make sure. Robert, there you go, Robert D. Felice, yeah, Robert. So there you go. I want to know what he thinks about it. You know what I mean?
Do you want to know what the best thing about it? I just come up with that question at the top of my head. That was not planned.
There you go, man. There you go. That's amazing.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm gonna have to start wrapping it up now. Like, seriously, because I gotta go. So
yeah, no, it's fine, mate.
Do you want to promote your stuff?
Yes, mate, of course. So you can find me on YouTube as Soundsphere, SOUNDSPHERE. So we do music interviews over there, or the Gimme A Hull Yeah wrestling podcast, where we do live streams and wrestling interviews. So Gimme A Hull Yeah on everything, and then also Soundsphere is my thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's promote Soundsphere and Gimme A Hull Yeah, and check us out, subscribe, join us on a live stream. Support my channels, and above all else, continue to support Anthony and the Anthony podcast, because I love it here. I love being on this channel with Anthony. And whoever's watched this for whatever it has been, 2 hours and 10 minutes, whoever's still with us, have a good day.
Thank you for coming on, Dom, and thank you for watching, you lovely people. And I always say thank you for the support. I know this has been a long way for an episode, but hopefully, now that I got one under my belt, we can get a couple of more rolling.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
So thank you for watching, everybody. Have a good day, and thank you for the support. And I will speak to you in a bit.
Nice. Cool. You do, right, man. Have you got to go? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really confused. I was at the top.
It's all right. It's good to see you, man.
And